two, one. What's up, everybody? Welcome to a different podcast. I'm here with Lou, as always, and our friend Jack Duke. He's a former baseball player, and he is on his way to naturopathic medicine school. Everybody say what's up to Jack. How you doing, Lou?
I'm doing good. I'm excited for the podcast. Jack and I go way back. We first met in high school. And then once I decided I was leaving Mississippi State, I went to Emporia and found out Jack was on the team, and I could not have been more excited. We actually ended up being, our apartments were right next door to each other. So I was basically living with him when I wasn't sleeping at my own apartment. So I'm excited to have him on. He's one of the smartest guys I know. And his story is very powerful, and it's one that needs to be shared. And I think that Jack has had a lot of things influence him in a way that has been extremely valuable to him and everybody around him. So I'd just like to send it over to Jack so he can kind of give us a little introduction on some of the things that shaped him.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for having me on here. And I value what you guys do here on the podcast, talking about, hard, challenging topics. And I'm just happy to be here. And I'm here in Overland Park at my parents' house. Right now, I'm just working on wood projects. I started a wood business. So I'm putting together like pallets and making like planter boxes and tables and stuff. So it's pretty nice to work with my hands, kind of get a break from the books and stuff like that. And then I'm starting med school, like Colin was saying, in a couple of months in Phoenix, where Lou kind of inspired me to go out there because he was living out there and working in the jewelry business. So made it out there, went on a visit, and he fortunately let me stay at his house for a few days. And I fell in love with the area, and I'm really excited to head out to Tempe, Arizona in a few months and start my journey on naturopathic medicine.
Yeah. And kind of just a little backstory on Jack. He was always somebody that was health conscious, but when he was in high school, he was diagnosed with diabetes, and it wasn't something that he saw coming. I believe that he was at baseball practice when he just felt like crap and knew something was wrong. And Jack, if you go into that a little bit and how it inspired you and how it was just like, for me, my biggest setbacks were the things that shaped me the most. And just what was that like when that kind of hit you?
So yeah, you were right. It was freshman year of high school baseball, and I just kept using the restroom. I kept peeing, and that's like a sign of type 1 diabetes, is that you've got so much blood sugar in your bloodstream that your kidneys and your other organs don't know what to do with it. So you just start peeing it out. And so I was skinny to begin with. I was about 6'2", 6'3", like 160 to begin with. And then I started losing like 5 pounds like a week. So then I was down to like 140 before I knew it. My parents were wondering like, okay, like he's looking kind of gone. My vision started to get kind of blurry, and I was playing first base, I remember, and like a ball just like zoomed right past my glove. And I was like, that's never happened. I've never had a vision problem, anything like that. So my mom took me into the doctor the next day, did some blood work and stuff like that, and learned that I had 1 diabetes. And yeah, it's supposedly genetics, but no one in my family has it up to my knowledge. But my mom took me to the hospital. It was a pretty startling experience. The fact that, I could die if I weren't, or if I wasn't getting this treatment of insulin. So that was like an eye-opening moment at 14 years old, where I was like, okay, if modern medicine wasn't where it's at, I couldn't check my blood sugar. I couldn't take insulin. I couldn't track my carbs, stuff like that. Like I could, just be on the ground. And like that scared me, and that woke me up, and it kind of shook me at 14 years old. And since then, I've just been able to like take that experience and, like Lou was saying, just kind of shape that into a positive experience to help me grow. And since then, I've really just taken a focus on health, well-being, sleep, just self-care, stuff like that. And it's just inspired me to go down a different path. And at first I thought, man, like I've been kind of wronged by getting type 1 diabetes, but it's been a really positive experience for me. I've met awesome people because of it. I've taken control of my life. I know what I want. I know why I want it. And I know I don't have forever here. So I really find like fulfillment in the fact that um, I'm alive. I get to live every single day. Modern medicine has got my back. And that's why like I'm just delving into this world of medicine, well-being, treatment, and stuff like that. It's just, it really inspired me, and I'm really thankful for the experience.
Yeah. It seems kind of it's kind of like a wake up call, but it's also just something where you realize how vulnerable you are. I think that people, the smarter and more intelligent people get, you start to kind of realize how much you don't know in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize that everybody's vulnerable and everybody has things that if other people didn't lay the groundwork before them, that it would not be good for them. And we it seems like today we're starting to lose a little bit of sight of that with the way that people are more interested in narratives than they are having conversations with people around them that do know stuff that they don't know, whether or not they know it. And I think that's a great way to approach life, is one with an extreme amount of gratitude and a learning mentality.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And
Uh,
we talk so much about just a growth mindset in general, and trying to use failure and setbacks as something to propel us forward. And for the people that are tuning in, like, we didn't really talk about any of this beforehand off air, and just to hear you say, that you were able to use it as a growing experience and use it in a positive way, and it give you a sense of purpose, I think is, it's good to hear that when it doesn't necessarily come from Lou and I, and it comes from somebody else, and you're taking that approach. And I think it just gives you such a different advantage when you look at things through optimism and positivity and gratitude, and instead of, why me. I think that people so commonly get into the why me attitude instead of being proactive and trying to be a creator in the situation and the hand that you're dealt. And I think that you've done a great job with that. And I think it's awesome that you're going to go and study medicine. And I got to know, like, what made you choose naturopathic medicine over a traditional medical route that we see so many people going into?
that's a good question. And I've been trying to kind of formulate the best response because people ask me a lot that question, and it's hard to answer it to where you're not putting down modern medicine because like I was kind of saying earlier, thank goodness for modern medicine because in traumatic events like that, like where would you turn? So that was just kind of like I want to lay that groundwork before I say that. But I found that naturopathic medicine is whole body systemic healing. And it's just like it's looking at the individual or the patient as an individual rather than just simply someone with symptoms and signs. So treating the individual like a person and the fact that they have all these organ systems in continuity and everything's just like working together. I think that focus really drew me in because I looked at my body. I said, okay, like I've got a problem here, but like it's not like a car. It didn't break down for one single reason. It broke down because there was a systemic problem, and it could be a habit or a lifestyle or something in the environment like air pollution, water, something like that. So when I started like kind of looking into curing myself of diabetes, and I know that there's not a cure to it, I started learning that okay, it's not just going to be like a pill that I take that's going to cure my pancreas and start making insulin again. It's going to be something that it's going to be a mindset shift. It's going to be an environmental shift. It's going to be a digestive system shift. Like everything inside has got to change, and it's not just going to be one single thing. So that's what got me thinking. Okay, so if I want to cure myself of diabetes, I've got to look at my body as a whole system. And so then I started looking in naturopathic medicine. The idea is systemic healing, whole body medicine, and it's a little, I don't know if it's looked down upon, but it's not where modern Western medicine is. And so that's where I was like, well, I don't want to be like some hippy dippy. like with herbs and tinctures and all that stuff. But I started supplementing on my own with ginkgo biloba, which just like increases vasodilation and all this stuff, and like just simple things. Creatine, I was able to added muscle, helped with insulin sensitivity, so I took less insulin because I had more muscle. Or just supplementing with like easy things that I could get at the store or in the garden or something like that. That's where I was like, hold on, like Eastern medicine and Chinese medicine has been around for thousands of years, and this has worked. And why would we exclude this type of medicine from the Western world? So that's where I was like, whoa, like there's absolutely something to it. And I think this day and age is like the perfect time to get into it, because people are starting to turn to each other and ask, like, why are there so many autoimmune diseases, and why are there so many diseases without cures? And that's where I think naturopathic medicine kind of fits into that. And that's where I was like, hold on, there's a lot of diseases that we don't even know why they're happening, but a single pill or a single diagnosis is not going to do it. It's going to be holistically healing that person. So that's where, like, when I learned that that was kind of the framework of that, and then I learned that SCNM, the college I'm going to in Phoenix, um, they do the same curriculum as med school, but they just have added on like acupuncture in different like modalities, like natural healing. So the fact that I was getting like the anatomy and phys, the microbiology, all that stuff that I really like, that's like Western medicine, it ties into Eastern medicine too. And that's where I got really pumped about it. I was like, this is the path for me. Like, this is like, these are the people I want to be around. This is like the education I need. So that's what really got me into it. And I'm just really pumped for the future.
Yeah. Yeah, that is awesome, and that's extremely inspiring. And I think that one thing that you're able to do that a lot of people kind of don't really consider doing for themselves is looking at correlations and saying, like, everyone knows, I've said this before, but correlation is not causation. But when you're actually like kind of, diving into something or immersing yourself in a subject, it's really good to look at correlation and kind of apply them to yourself and say, well, we haven't proven this yet, but it's showing a lot of promise. And like you're trying to cure yourself of diabetes. Like, I think you said that in there, and I don't think many people would really understand how difficult that is to do. And no one's ever done that. And so putting yourself in a vulnerable position to say something like that, where it's like, that's the ultimate inspiration to me right there. It's like he's taking himself and saying, all right, here's a situation where no one's really been able to do it, and I'm going to just kind of make my own way. And that's a good way to be nowadays, especially when you're talking about like Eastern medicine being things like now a lot of people's problems are solved with Western medicine. A lot of people are taking prescriptions and taking pills where maybe they should be looking a little more at Eastern medicine to try to cure themselves of things like depression and anxiety, which is, consuming a lot of people today.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, the look at the body as a whole. I've grown up with natural medicine through my mom. My mom was a massage therapist, so she kind of more understood those things than most people. But for me, I've always viewed it this way, and I like how you put it with looking at it as a systemic issue rather than just face value symptoms that Western medicine tends to leave us with. And for those of people who are listening in who have never really looked into natural medicines, and it's not like, I feel like it's not like voodoo, I feel like some people have this idea where it's like this voodoo stuff, and you said that some people may look down upon it. And but the thing with Western medicine, like I was saying, is it just treats the face value symptom and doesn't look at how the body is connected as a whole. And it's like there's a whole operation going on inside that everything is connected. Everything relies on the other thing. And so when you look at it at face value, you're only treating one part when there's could be other things going on that we don't know about. So I really enjoyed the way that you put that, and we're able to convey that to the people and to us, because it truly is something different. And I applaud you for going that way. I'm a big advocate for it, and I think it's something more people should at least be informed about.
Well, thank you. And I think a discussion we could have kind of like to build on that, like just the research that goes into, modern medicine that kind of solidifies it as like, this is something that like, the whole population take. And it's like, just because it passes, certain guidelines doesn't mean anything because the research was done by some lobbyist pushing a certain pharmaceutical drug. Whereas, like, way back when we listened to the stars and the constellations and kind of like guided calendars and farming practices off of that, when like science kind of became I guess modern science, where it was like it's got to be testable, it's got to be in a lab, we've got to do it in a petri dish. Um, I think we lost some stuff too because like we kind of look down upon certain things that can't be verified by science in a lab, and it's like that doesn't mean it's not viable or it's not a good option. It just means it's not easily like replicated in a lab, and it's not um, solidified by scientists. But I don't think that like that stamp on it does it for me after like seeing that a prescription drug versus like a natural herb can do the same thing. It's like, well, there's no incentive for this natural herb to get tested by a pharmaceutical company. They're not going to make money on the patent. So I find it so interesting that it's like this dogmatic thinking that like it's got to be passed by science, and like we just kind of lost that along the way. And it's like if it's not verified, like I'm not interested, it's not safe. And I just don't think that's the case because we've lost a lot of like natural earthly things because they're not scientifically measured or like applicable in a lab setting. So I just find that interesting, and I don't know what your guys' take is on.
Well, no, that's very interesting because we now live in the age of information where every piece of information, anyone can put anything on the internet. And there's so much information out there, and it's really, really difficult to sift through it and find what's good and what's not good because there are a lot of people out there that don't have altruistic motives where they're actually just trying to help. And I mean, that's part of just being in a capitalism in a country that runs on capitalism. And a lot of companies are out there, their main objective is obviously to make money and support their system. But when you do talk about things like pharmaceuticals, like one thing that I learned is that the United States is one of only a few countries that actually advertises drugs on television, prescription drugs on television. And it's, they get to the end of the commercial and they read about 65 different symptoms that could come along or side effects that could come along with it. So it's a very important discussion to have because there's a lot of people that, don't spend any time outside, and just being outside, breathing fresh air, putting your feet in the fresh grass, there's a benefit to it. And whether or not I can put my finger on it, I feel it and I believe it.
See, that's the key for me is like, I feel like modern society has pushed us so far in the direction to lose the sense of feeling of nature and like the peacefulness and the grounding that can come from that. And for me, like Lou and I have talked about it in previous podcasts, but Lou always says that we live in the safest time possible with you could just basically sit in your house and watch Netflix and you're essentially like nothing's going to happen to you. And I was like, that's a good way of putting it. But with that being said, like what that does is it traps you in this cycle of constant media, constant just, you're reliant on other things instead of taking time out of your day to go outside to, like you said, put your feet in the grass, feel that. And for me, a big thing that gets lost in that is intuition. We get so caught up in needing the facts. We need the hard statements. We need something that we can prove, like you were saying, with the scientific method and going about it that way. And I think there is something to the intuition piece, and all human beings have it, which to me would point in the direction that it's somewhat important and has been for a while because it's still hardwired in our brains to have that kind of sense, that sixth sense, if that's what people want to call it. And I think the more people get away from that, the more they feel the need something concrete. And so I think that's where you get that fear of something unknown or something that's like natural medicine, where it's just like you can't always prove it. You just gotta trust it. And that's hard for people when they can't, like, and if you want to get into like bigger things like religion, people like, they need concrete, especially in today's day and age. And if it's not that, then they don't want to believe in it, or they don't want to even dabble or look into it. So I think, for me at least, it gets into this idea of intuition and just being part of something that's far more interconnected than we realize. I was listening to a podcast the other day with Jay Shetty, and they were talking about, him and his guests were talking about how an inexperienced meditator can, by sending good, like, loving energy to a person, 57% of the time that person in that moment felt better, and they couldn't explain why. So that's just speaking to the interconnectedness of people that we just are not even really understanding at its full capacity. Like, we're just maybe beginning to understand it through science, and then people will be like, oh, it makes sense. But to me, like, that, all of that has been lost in this whole modern age, where we're just completely void of even going outside if we need to.
That's funny. Yeah, and have you guys seen the documentary Heal? It's on
I
Netflix.
have not.
It's kind of right up this alley that we're talking about. And it was funny you said that about people praying and meditation, because there was one story on in the documentary that this doctor was, she prays for her patients, every single one of them. She's like, I tell them I do it, like they don't have to comply, but like I will. And like, I don't know the percent, but her turnover rate was awesome. Like she was just like people were getting better in her clinic. And yeah, I mean, it's not tangible. We can't like see the prayers, or we can't maybe directly feel them, but just because it's not tangible does not mean it's there or it's not there. Um, I think it's really powerful stuff. And I think what you guys were kind of talking about before the show, like communication, words and stuff, those are extremely powerful. Though we can't feel or see them, like words are, they can build or break someone. And I think that like how we use our words and how we communicate, even verbal or nonverbal cues and stuff like that, it's pretty powerful. So I think that yeah, like people just looking for concrete, tangible things is just like that's not the answer, because there's so much more to this world than just like what we see with our eyes. So I mean, that's a really good point.
One of my favorite movies that I'm 0% embarrassed to tell people is Kung Fu Panda, and
I've
the
seen that.
yeah, one of my favorite quotes from that is, "You must let go of the illusion of control." And I think that's kind of what we're talking about with this concrete thing, where it's like, there's a lot of people that are so anxious, and they don't ever get comfortable doing what they're doing because they just want more, and
Mhm.
that's not a good way to be. And when people are just constantly wanting more and they don't have a direction or a goal, they kind of just wander into what other people might want for them, and maybe it's good, maybe it's not, but wandering is only good when you're in a state where you're moving forward. So to have a goal is so important, and it's not something that people really understand until you are almost willing to take something a little too far. Like myself, I was doing something, and Jack is somebody that definitely inspired me in my lifting career. But I was lifting like 7 days a week on my own, on top of my baseball lifts at school. So I was doing 9 or 10 workouts, and my back doesn't feel good most days. And I think that I definitely could have worked smarter and not harder. But my goal was to work as hard as I possibly could, so that whenever I was done with baseball, that I left no stone unturned. And, I kind of did, in the sense of working smarter, not harder. But at the time, I didn't really know any better. And my direction was clear. And it worked really well for me for being able to have a career that I'm proud of. And I just think it's very valuable. And to have a direction is so important.
No, that's a really good point. Do you guys like journal daily, or do you have anything you like write down goal oriented wise?
I journal some. It's more I'll get on my computer and I'll type it up. But I try to do it more often than I do. But when something I feel like when something happens and I want to either remember it for the good or for the bad, or try to get recapture kind of the thought process or the feeling or whatever it is, I'll try to write it down. That way at least there's something to learn there typically. So I try to keep an eye on it and have it somewhere where I can reach it.
Definitely. What about you, Lou?
Yeah, I have actually I've been using this thing probably 3 or 4 times a week. I'll sit down and I'll use this writing prompts book I got. It has 300 writing prompts. And like for me, it was always something where I liked to write and I like to use an actual pen or pencil because I think that's an art form that we're losing also. But I'll take whatever prompt it is and, I'll just open to a random page and take it. And, it could be anything. It just takes me in a direction that I wouldn't have gone in had I not opened up this, book with sometimes cheesy questions or whatever. I just buy into the 15, 30 minutes that I write.
Yeah. I just that's something I adopted about 2 years ago, and I just have not stopped doing it. It's just as long as it's a couple times a week, I feel like it's a different type of forum that I'm allowing my brain or body or spirit, whatever it is, just go. And there's no pressure. I just do it each morning with my feet on a grounding mat. So okay, I'm doing something good for my body, and I'll just write down whatever. And I don't really go on prompts. I usually go on Pinterest and look up philosophical quotes or something just to kind of get my brain going. But I found that so powerful just for things that I can't put in words, or maybe emotions that I can't really pinpoint. I just if there's a memory or a thought or something, I just kind of let it go. And it's been really helpful. And I think that it's helped me release trapped emotions, um, like I was saying, that I couldn't maybe express in words or to another person. But um, I found that so powerful, just to have clarity for the rest of the day, that I start my day with a fresh canvas, and I've let go of anything that I'm holding on to. And yeah, I just I wanted to know if you guys were up to that too.
No, that's a great point, because I just moved from Arizona to Kansas City. It's about a 20-hour drive, and our buddy Dan Bakura, he rode back with me. Yeah. He's just fun to be around. And in a 20-hour car ride, you have a real chance to bounce ideas off of other people that you might not necessarily get into an emotional state where you're ready to talk about those things.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're stuck in a car with somebody for 20 hours, you can have some pretty amazing conversations. And I think that's a huge benefit of writing in the morning, where you have a lot of things on your mind, but you can't necessarily put your finger on it, nor do you have somebody there right when you wake up that's on the same wavelength as you.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are just trying to sit down and focus, you can actually write down and get some of those emotions out that you can't necessarily get out without having someone to actually chat about it with. It's Jordan Peterson said that the closest thing to critical thinking that you can do is writing. They're almost identical. And so applying critical thinking without anyone else there is not an easy thing to do. And I think writing is a great forum for you to do that.
I want to backtrack just a little bit. Jack, are you somebody who works or practices any sort of meditation or anything like that?
Definitely. Twice a day, for sure.
Yeah, that's something. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I started it about a year ago, maybe so. It was called the 3M meditation. It's mindfulness for about a minute or two, where you do your five senses. You meditate for about 8 to 10 minutes, and then you manifest. That got me into meditation. I heard this audiobook on it, and it really submerged me into it. I was like, this is really easy. It's a blueprint to do it. It's for execs. It's not for yogis. So I was like, this is simple. This is easy. I saw the benefits to it, and then now I've just kind of gotten into that world where I don't know if I stick to that, but I meditate at least twice a day, in the morning and then in the afternoon. What about you, Colin?
I do. I do it once a day typically. That's kind of my routine that I've found works best for me. Um, but I enjoy it. I think it's something that out of everything that I've tried to practice, from hypnosis to just being super mindful of your thoughts, and being an active observer of your thoughts and emotions and things like that. Like, some of it works for me, some of it doesn't. And or I would say all of it works, but they work to different degrees. And I think meditation has really propelled me to be able to, like you were saying with your journaling, work through different emotions and things that are trapped and negativity, and like get rid of, just kind of flush all that stuff out. For me, meditation is the one thing that I typically turn to see the most benefit and make me feel the best. Some people, some people aren't a fan. I perfectly fine with that. I just think for me, after trying all these different things, that's my go-to, and it's something that I look forward to and I enjoy. I feel so much better afterwards.
Yeah. And I mean, once I started that 3M meditation, that's what really got me into meditation. I was like, okay, so this works. Now I kind of want to dabble in a few different ones. And to this day, I was reading another book. I don't remember the title, but it was just talking about how whatever it is, whatever gets you to that parasympathetic, to that point that like you are present, you're here like right now, and you're listening to your body, your mind, your soul, all that stuff. Whatever gets you to that point, that's fine. And then manifesting or visualizing right after that, I found that to be very powerful. I started doing Wim Hof, his breath work, and you do like 30 inhales. It's real fast and it gets a sympathetic response. So you're releasing some cortisol, and it's like a little bit of a stress response. And then after that 30th inhale and exhale, you hold your breath, and that hold is where your body's just like kind of like it's kind of like this weird meditative state, but it gets you there really quickly. So I found if I do a couple rounds of that, like that 2 minute, 3 minute hold that I've got, I literally have like perfect clarity. And it's just like, it's great to experiment with that stuff. But like right now, like I would suggest that to a lot of people. It's just like finding that clarity once or twice a day is like, it's been huge for me. And it's been huge for like relationships and like my family and stuff like that. Not that I ever had any problems with it, but I'm just like, I'm so much more present and I'm so much more empathetic to people when I meditate and when I give myself a chance to kind of just like debrief. And it's just been a great practice for me.
I think that's fascinating stuff. And I would assume that you're very self-reflective, in the sense that you try to understand. Nothing necessarily gets by you, and you're always trying to understand how you feel, why you feel the way you feel, whether it be emotionally or physically. And that gets back to, I think, your early experience with diabetes, and being all of that plays a part in who you are today. And I think that's super interesting. Um, but like you said, just being able to get to that state, even if you're there for just like a minute, like the benefits within you, and being just in the moment, being where your feet are, and then on top of that, how that carries over to other people and other relationships, because energy is so contagious, positive and especially negative energy. It just has a way of, if it's consuming you, it's going to consume the people around you. And um, yeah, the benefits to relationships. And I studied communication in school, and a lot of interpersonal relationships and different things like that. And I wish that somebody would talk more about energy and the ability to impact somebody on an energy level, because nobody within regular academics talks about this. And so obviously you're going into natural medicine, you have found a route that you're going to be able to talk about those things. um, but as I learn more, and as I talk with more people about these different things, I think it's something it's just a missing element, I think, in a lot of practices, a lot of areas of study. And man, I wish we could get back to more of that and try to understand that, because sometimes communication, just approaching it with good energy, positive energy, it can change the entire dynamic of a conversation without doing any other communication style changes at all. So
Mhm.
I think it's just an interesting kind of road to go down and conversation to have in general.
Totally. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's just like that feedback that you get, and it doesn't have to be like it's hugely impactful, like energy. People might say like vibes and stuff like that, but like me and Lou, we kind of lived together a few years ago, and we had four people, and it was a four-person apartment. But he was also coming in because he was right down the hallway. So there's five people there, and my girlfriend, she's really like empathetic, so she really feels for people, and it's not so bad, but it's to a degree that like she'll watch movies and she'll physically feel like torn up or physically feel like sick because someone's getting like shot, and she puts herself in that situation. So it's been really interesting to hear stuff from her because like when we were living, she was coming up to that apartment, so she was staying in my room, and she could like with the door closed, she could like tell me how people were feeling and stuff like that, just based on them walking in the door, and she wasn't even like looking at them. And I'm not like saying she's got special powers or anything, but like there's absolutely something to people, their energy, their conscious, their subconscious, all that stuff, and it's fascinating that you know we can give off that without even just talking, just by being there. Like we can be read, so which is just crazy to me.
Hmm. Well, and I think a lot of things like the word vibe and that it's an overused word
Mhm.
for a lot of people. And when someone hears that, they do think of like a hippie or something. But it's just something that you really can't ignore anymore. There's people every single day that go to their job and it's a toxic environment, and then they come home and they let that rub off on their family and the people around them. And that was something for me where it was like my last year of baseball at Emporia. I did my best to really try and be positive at baseball, and it took I kind of took a beating for it, where it was like I'm trying to be that guy all the time. And then it was very nice having your guys' room to go to where it's like, man, I was alone in that room pretty much. My roommates didn't play baseball. So when you actually just can find a place where you can go and you can absorb positive energy and be around people that bring a light into your life, that's something that people should really be on the lookout for at all times, and be willing to accept new people in their life. And that's something that is kind of being lost a little bit today.
And I think for me too, it gets back to who you surround yourself with, in the sense that you have to, when you're conscious of your energy and what you're putting out uh, vibrationally and all of these different things, um, you have to watch out for people who are just looking for that to benefit,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so easy for somebody like I was saying, energy is so contagious. But if I'm vibrating at a high level and I feel good and I have good energy, and somebody who I'm with is just hanging out with me so that they can kind of feed off that and just take that, and slowly, time after time, I'm going to start losing that, because it's just so hard for my being to keep up with that. And all the meanwhile, they're getting better because they're just taking my energy away. And like I don't know, for people who are listening, this might be kind of like really not making a lot of sense. But if I have energy and you can take it, like it in that way, you have to be so careful, because if people are just there to take your energy and feed off of your positive energy, you have to be in such a mind space to be able to upkeep your personal energy. And shout out to people like therapists and different things like that, who have that ability to meet with people who are in negative states, and they're able to give, like, that's a hard thing to do. And I think it's something that shouldn't be overlooked at all. But it just should be, you should be mindful of who you surround yourself with, and um, their intentions with how they talk to you, how they treat you. Um, and God, if they're always in a negative mindset, you might want to call a timeout on that relationship for a little while, let them kind of find themselves a little bit, for, in my eyes at least.
Yeah. I think that it's so interesting because I don't know how the saying goes, but you kind of like turn into an average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. So, and I've really taken note of that during the quarantine because we'll be going to Dallas for a couple weeks and we'll come back to Overland Park for a couple weeks. And it's just interesting because, yeah, I'm really conscientious about my thoughts and my day to day life and stuff. But regardless of that, like, I still feel a little bit changed when I'm with my girlfriend's family versus when I'm with my family versus when I'm visiting my sister in Louisiana. So, like, you kind of change and your behaviors and habits kind of change too. And it's just so funny. And it's something that, people should be conscientious of is that you shouldn't be worried about it, but you should take note of who you're surrounding yourself with because you pick up on their energy, their habits, their morals, their ethics. So it's just something to watch and kind of keep in the back of your head that, like, do I want to surround myself with these people? Do I like where these people are going? Like, do they have similar goals as me? Stuff like that. And I think that's really profound to start focusing on that. Whereas other people, who don't know that might just be kind of floating and following other people's footsteps.
Hmm. And that's a thing where you also need to kind of create boundaries in your life where you don't spend, you don't allow people too much access to you when, you have your own goals and you have your own, you have your own schedule made up where it's like, I have to do like this so much where I don't want to be mean by saying like, hey, I don't really want to do that, or I don't want to hang out. I don't have time for that. It's not necessarily that I don't have time, but I really do have my own things that I need to work on. And a lot of people are unforgiving when you tell them that you're doing something else or it's just not the right time for that, where there's a right way to go about it. And everybody needs people in their life that are positive. And when somebody's super negative like that, that's one thing I studied in psychology was where it's like, when people are stuck in that negative mindset and they're trying to kind of feed off of you, it's like you really have to lock in for those moments. And you want to give them your positive energy, but you do need to kind of get on a real level with them while they are taking your positive energy and get on the same level where it's like, hey, I see what's going on and like I want to help, but I can't help you if you don't want to help yourself. And that's a point that a lot of people are so offended to hear nowadays. And I think that it's for somebody that is trying to help, you do have to start with just one person where you try that on one person. And then you can kind of elevate and, change the environment that you're in. When, like you said, when you go see your girlfriend's family versus your own family, it's an environment created by the people. And you always have an opportunity to affect that in a positive way.
And in communication too, when you look at it, like you said, there's slight changes when you go from person to person or place to place. All of that is within a natural kind of sway of communication. Like, you are going to slightly change your habits, your practices with different people, and that's perfectly fine. A lot of people are going to be like, no, that's being two-faced. No, it's not. It's actually just a natural flow of communication and how you have to be in certain situations. And but to that point, like, you have to be mindful of, you can't just flip the switch to a completely other person. I think that's where people get lost in the whole deal, is like, they're like, hey, I'm what I do at home doesn't carry over here. And they're like completely different. And I think that that's a dangerous way to go about living your life. I think everything is interconnected, like we've been talking about. And um, it's I don't know. For me, it's important that people understand the difference. There's a natural leeway of communication, and then there's just outright manipulation and um, just complete flipping the switch in terms of who you are, what you think, how you say, what you say. All of that plays into it. But yeah, I think it's super important just for people to make that distinction and realize that within a certain level, it's okay and it's natural.
Yeah.
On top of that, I kind of think it's really important, and back to what you guys were saying at the beginning, I think maybe we were talking before the podcast started, but just having a strong framework of belief and faith in yourself and your ethics and morals and stuff like that, and then showing flexibility with situations and being mindful of different environments and situations. It's like that flexibility can be really important because you're not going to be the same exact person you are at work and at home and with buddies or with a girlfriend, stuff like that. So I think it's like it's kind of what you guys are like building off of this podcast is like having a strong framework as to like who you are and how you define yourself, and then just being conscientious of other people and like showing that flexibility that like, oh, like I can kind of morph myself a little bit this way, but like I'm here, like this is like who I am and this is how I define myself. So it's a cool point.
Yeah.
To build off of that, actually, I did an exercise not an overly long time ago. Kind of comes from Buddhist teachings in the sense of grounding and mindfulness of who you are as a person and as an identity. And I think when I got done with baseball, there was this certain level of identity loss and like loss of purpose of like, what am I going to do now? And so for me, I had to take a step back and really try to self-reflect on who I was. And I found it interesting when I started reading, looking into these different practices and self-identity. It became very apparent that you can't identify with something that isn't, or that can be taken away from you at any moment. I think the people tend to try to identify whether it's with athletics or money or status or something that can quite literally be taken away in an instant, or another person. I think that's another key one that people, naturally can get into and identify with another person. But I just made a list of, I like sharing this because I made a list of like five things of like who I am at the most fundamental level. And it was basically supposed to be used as a scorecard. And I got this from a book that I was reading, but basically used as a scorecard to test myself throughout the day. If I'm halfway through the day, how am I doing in these five things and how true am I being to myself? And then what I did was I took that piece of paper, it was like a little square, fold it up, put it in my hat. But when I wear different hats, I put the piece of paper in different hats, whatever one I'm wearing. And for me, that was just super symbolic of no matter what hat I'm wearing, no matter what job I'm doing, no matter what I'm doing, what person I'm with, like I'm still the same person at the most fundamental level. And I think people just try to skate by and not understand themselves as an individual and who they are as just a fundamental being. And that's where people get lost and they attach themselves to different things that can be taken away. And I just like sharing that story. I haven't shared it yet on the podcast, but it's just something for me that was symbolic enough for it to make sense and for me to be like, this is who I am, and I can do different things, but I'm still the same person no matter what. So I think that's just a cool experience for me and something that I like doing.
Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit of an attachment to the ego too, where you have those five things that you write down where it's like, this is who I want to be, this is the kind of the direction I want for my life. And it's very easy to forget that when you go to different places and you leave your mindset, because you enter the car from, say, your house, and your mindset changes automatically. You get into a routine where your brain is like, okay, now I'm in the car, I'm going to plug my phone in, and like you don't even think about it most of the time. Like that's how I am. I don't ever listen to the radio. I have so many just habits where it's like I can always increase my mindfulness. And every time you take your hat off and that piece of paper falls out and you forget about it, it's a reminder. It's going to change the path of your life in one way or another. And there's a lot of people that one documentary that I know Jack has seen. I don't know if you have, called The Secret. The guy talks about a gratitude rock. And it's just a random rock that he liked. And every time he took it out of his pocket, he said something he was grateful for. And those little small reminders are so important because people just don't they get into a mode where they're going through the motions, and it's just easier than ever to do that today. And I think that's a very valuable thing, where it's like that was your thing, putting something in your hat where you see those 5 things, and it's good to be grounded in who you are, because if you don't stray too far from it, it's much easier to handle the swings of life, because every single person that is going it has they could attach to some sort of tragedy. Everyone's life is tragic. Everyone's oppressed. Like, oppression is so commonly talked about now, where it's like I could talk about how oppressed I am, but there's people that are more oppressed than me. There's always somebody that's more oppressed than you. And when you think about that, it's like, well, what are you going to do about it? It's up to you now to get over that oppression, because there's a way forward, and the way forward is not to harp on the oppression.
That's a big thing with kind of growing up and maturing, is that we talked about it a little bit ago, but everyone's going through hardships and everyone's got struggles. And it's just how we respond to the failures and successes, and how we transcend the challenges in our everyday life, and long-term, short-term traumas, injuries, whatever it is. Like, it's like that's what like defines us, and that's what creates like a strong mindset, or a strong mentality, whatever it is. It's just your response every single time to adversity or to struggles. And it's just like that's what really like helped me understand other people, is that yeah, like I might have like a challenging life. I might have to check my blood sugar, might have to check my pump. I don't get to leave my pump. I don't, like there's like certain limitations, but at the end of the day, like I've got a really good opportunity to be successful in this life. And it's nice to know, not nice to know, but it's reassuring that everyone is going through struggles, whether it's internal, external, injury, trauma. Um, it's just that's a big part of maturing for me, and that's what kind of like took me to the next level in adulthood, I guess, was understanding people more, and understanding that they're challenged every single day, whether it's hard, bad, like they're adapting to their environment. And and it also taught me a little bit more empathy, because I can be more patient for other people because they're challenged. So I mean, that's a big thing for me that I've taken away.
Yeah, you never know somebody else's full story.
Yeah.
That you never understand how they're feeling, what they're going through in that moment, and that like it can change so rapidly. It can change day to day. It can change hour to hour, and it's like I think when we talk about treating just people with a general respect and like choosing empathy towards other people, like that's how we should approach that. I think it's something for me, like I don't ever want to disrespect anybody. I always am trying to understand why they feel this way, why they think that this is the best option. Like I want to understand the premises behind your thinking, behind your thoughts. And um it's just so important that we look at things from a lens of empathy and trying to understand, because we just don't know. Like we don't know what both of like I don't know what both of you guys are going through right now, and we've been talking for almost an hour. Like it's perfectly normal, and you're never going to know. But the more open-minded and the more empathetic we can approach people from any angle, whether it be just communication, whether it be online, whether it be you just see them, like who knows? Like no matter what, we should try to treat people with empathy and try to just understand that we don't understand.
And it's more energy intensive. Like it's not easier to do this, but I think long term, like relationships are more cultivated. I think that you're more present with people when you try to understand them. I think that like yeah, like in this moment, I'm gonna have to think just a little bit harder about you guys, and I'm gonna think like maybe just a little bit longer about what brought you guys here, or someone I meet on the street. I might, you know, it might take my brain a little bit more energy to do that, but I think long term, like the payout is so much better because you're present, and I think the relationships that you make with that mindset, and like the people that you meet from then on, is like that's more powerful than just kind of going with the flow and, you know, all that. So
Absolutely. I mean, when you take the time to evaluate your relationships, the meaning increases, the value increases, and the people that you interact with will have a more valuable view of you. And why would you not want that?
yeah.
It does take more energy, but what else are you doing? What's more important than your relationships with the people around you? And one thing that I wanted to ask Jack specifically, it might take a slight different, it might be, it's a little switching gears here, but it's one thing where Jack, we played together at Emporia, and Jack decided to stop playing a little early, and it was a thoughtful decision where I respected him as a teammate and as a friend, and it really didn't create any hitches in our relationship at all. But I know that there's a lot of people, especially athletes, that are very scared to voice their opinion on some of the anxiety and discomfort that they are, especially when you're on a team where a lot of people have thoughts about leaving the team or something like that. And I think Jack did it the exact right way. And I just kind of want to allow him to talk about that. And I think it could really help somebody out there.
So yeah, basically what you were saying was it was getting towards the end of the season, and we were traveling a lot, and I uh, was I a junior or a senior? No, so I was a junior in college, and my classes were getting pretty heavy, and I wasn't playing a whole bunch, but I had my nose to the grindstone, and I was hitting the gym, I was hitting after practice, I was trying to get the most out of practice. So like, I truly thought I was doing the best that I could, um, but deep down, where it really changed for me was discovering that this wasn't the right path for me. The right path for me was, something that woke me up in the morning and like I wanted to hop out of bed and do. And baseball wasn't doing that for me. And it was hard because, from middle school on, I thought that, I was going to get drafted and I was going to go to the major leagues. And that was a dream, but that dream kind of shifted to more medicine, more doctor oriented when I got diabetes. And it took me a little bit to identify that. And it was emotional and it was bizarre. And I don't like considering myself a quitter because like I work just so hard and I respect people and like I don't want to like ever um, hurt anyone. But at the end of the day, it was the best decision for me. And I was able to get my grades up, and I ended up getting like a tutoring opportunity at Emporia where I was tutoring people in anatomy and phys and then microbiology. And that being an awesome opportunity that I wouldn't have gotten if I were to keep playing and keep just pushing that because like I said, it was awkward. It was weird for me to just push that behind me, but it was the best thing for me, and I'm really happy that I did it. And I was able to find a med school that I really wanted to go to. I was able to have some freedom in my life for the first time, where I had like that time freedom to not hustle and bustle all the time. So this last year and couple months, not playing baseball has been a true gift for me, and it's allowed me the space and clarity that I needed to figure out what I wanted to do with my next step in my life.
And you were super honest with yourself in that moment, and that's probably the hardest thing to do. And I respect the hell out of that decision because, like, for me, I was I've said it before, I'll say it again. I was two-time JV player, teammate of the year, and player of the year. It just is a thing where I'll take pride in that because it was a part of my life that I'm willing to bring up because it was extremely uncomfortable. And I pride myself on being a good teammate, and I would say that you're one of the better teammates I've ever had. And I think that that's just being honest about what's going on, who you are in that moment. And I appreciate you sharing that story because a lot of people feel the same way. I felt that way at times, and I'm sure a lot of others did. And it's not an easy story to share. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's okay to take action on those feelings too, because if you don't, man, you can get stuck in the rut, and then you're chasing, and then you're like just trying to stick it out, and then the things can turn from bad to worse in that sense if you don't recognize it and just take action on it. Like, I think I'm super action oriented, and so for me it speaks volumes. But to other people, they may fear that taking that action or taking that step. But for me, more power to you for recognizing that and just kind of taking it by the horns and being like, this isn't for me. And there's other passions, and if there's other passions, that's okay. Like, it is what it is. You gotta chase what your passions and your goals are. You only get one shot at this whole thing, so you may as well choose to do it the way you want.
Yeah, no, and I mean, just on top of that, it's important for people to understand that they have the choice in every single situation, but there's always an opportunity to say yes, no. And I'm not saying like, yeah, you should go willy-nilly and just like make all these rash decisions. Like I do think you should sit down and like be reflective of yourself and what you want. But like it was powerful to know that, oh, like I don't have to stick this out if I don't want to. Like I am confident in myself that like I know what I want and like something's in the way. So I just have to kind of remove that and just like keep going. And like that's where I kind of saw that path in my life where I was like, this is where I need to make a weird decision or an awkward decision here, but it's what I want and what I need. So I think that people do need to understand that they always have a choice in every situation. And I think that it's like, it's powerful, or it at least can be, as long as you're being respectful and, reflective of yourself and you think that, this is well thought out. So, but yeah, no, it's been great and it's been empowering. So I'm happy with where I'm at and where I'm going.
Yeah. And as we kind of wrap up here, one more thing. What obviously your goals will be ever changing throughout as you begin your new journey to naturopathic medicine school. And what's kind of your goal with that? What can you see yourself doing with that? Obviously, you talked about curing yourself of diabetes, but obviously you want to help a lot of people. And like, just where do you kind of see yourself going?
Yeah. So the thing I like about naturopathic medicine in the school, especially, is that it kind of, instead of narrowing you to like a certain practice, like cardiologist or um, like a physician that's just specializing in endocrinology or something like that, naturopathic kind of just spreads you. So it kind of gives you a taste of all of it. And then at the end of it, it's like, where do you want to go? Because again, it's holistic. So you're going to be treating the whole body or the whole person. So with that, I knew that, yeah, I wanted to go to school. I wanted to really submerge myself. I wanted to learn all these different modalities. I wanted to understand them. And then the goal for me or plan for me is that I'm going to go to 4 years of school here. My girlfriend's moving with me to Arizona, and she's going to Arizona State and doing the master's program with marriage and family therapy. And I mean, like you guys know that would be just like emotional trauma, relationships, communication, that kind of stuff. And I mean, that's part of the holistic vision is that like, yeah, like our relationships and the way we communicate, like those are important. So we would like to marry that and create a practice where it's psychology and it's holistic healing and it's just a practice where we could treat individuals, families, whatever that may be. That's an idea that we have. That's something that we like to do together. Um, I initially wanted to go to naturopathic school to have a doctor next to my name because I wanted to conduct research on type 1 diabetes. And with that, I'd like to not only cure myself, but like make that cure accessible to everyone. And like, that's something I visualize every single day is that like, not just like, because curing myself is going to be great. It's like, oh, I don't have to have a pump or I don't have to have insulin or whatever it might be. But like, really, the fulfillment is going to come when like I can spread that to children, to families, to underprivileged people. Like, if I can find something that solid enough that it helps these people, so they're not reliant on Medicare or they're not reliant on insurance companies covering insulin, stuff like that. Like, that's where the fulfillment will come. And I'd like to write a book about that. I'd like to just spread that, the healing, the cure, all that stuff worldwide. Like, that would be the tip.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have a lot of pathways to do that, and I'm very excited to see where it goes. And it's a great thing that you're doing, and it's a noble and worthy cause, in my opinion. So I'm very excited to see where that goes. It's a good thing.
Well, thank you. And yeah,
I would
I really
agree.
appreciate you guys having me on here. It's been a lot of fun, and the conversations have been great. And it's something that I don't, you don't get to talk about with everyone. So I really appreciate your guys, your patience, and you guys have going on here with the podcast. It's a really cool thing.
And Jack, if there's any way you want to tell everybody ways to find you, if they want to reach out to you, if you're open to that, whether it be Instagram, Twitter, if you have a website, anything like that that you want to share those handles where people can find you and get a hold of you.
So yeah, I'm not really on social media much, but I am on Instagram. I've got a fitness account. It's Your Average Duke with underscores between the names, and then my normal Instagram is Jack Duke 4. And then we just made our wood palette Instagram, which you guys should check out. It's all the wood things. So yeah, those are my 3 handles, and um, I don't have a website yet, but yeah, hopefully we'll get there someday.
Yeah.
And for those of you still listening, we will have the links to these 3 handles in the description. And if you guys liked what we talked about today, want to talk about it more, or want to reach out to any of the 3 of us, you know where to find us at A Different Podcast on Instagram, or leave us a comment in the comment section. Make sure to like and subscribe us as well. And we want to send a major thank you to Jack and meeting with us and truly, honestly, giving me a different perspective. And this guy's on a mission to help people in a vast scale. And we wish you all the best, man. And we hope to follow you. And if there's ever anything we can do with the podcast, any message you want to send out, definitely let us know. And I'm sure we'll see you again very soon.
Well, that sounds good. Again, thank you very much for having me, and this has been a really good experience.
Absolutely. Glad to have you.
All right, guys.
All righty. Cheers.
See ya.